Good afternoon and welcome to the Candidate Forum that is being co-sponsored today by the Cherokee County Chamber of Commerce and the Cherokee County Farm Bureau. I'm Pam Carnes and I serve as President and CEO of the Cherokee County Chamber. And I'm excited to be here this afternoon to learn from the candidates that are running for U.S. Senate. And that is, of course, the seat that is currently held by Kelly Loeffler. So thank you all for joining us this afternoon. We've all cleared our technology check. We appreciate all of you being on with us, and I think we're going to have a good time this afternoon. I will ask to make it so that everybody is able to hear clearly. When you are not responding to a question or sharing either your opening remarks, of course, or closing, if you would mute your microphone, that may help us with background noise. So I do appreciate that very much. So again, on behalf of the Cherokee County Chamber of Commerce and the Cherokee County Farm Bureau, thank you all for being with us this afternoon. So that our listeners will know, we are going to give each candidate 2 minutes for their opening remarks. As this is a forum, not a debate, we know that they will be very professional in their comments, as this is about the candidate and their campaign, not their opposition. Each candidate will then be asked the same questions. So every candidate will receive the same questions. There will be 3 questions today. You will each have 2 minutes to respond to those questions. And then we'll have 1 minute of closing comments for each candidate as well. The video from today's forum will be provided to all of the candidates for them to share with their constituents and on their campaign pages and via their social media. It will also be available through both the Chamber of Commerce website and social media channels, as well as Cherokee County Farm Bureau. So if you all are ready, I think that we are set and we'll get started. So again, as I mentioned before we came on to the call, for opening remarks, those will be done in a random order, and then we will circulate 3 questions alphabetically. So this afternoon, our first to share their 2 minutes of opening remarks, I'd like to ask Mr. Richard Winfield.
Thank you. My name is Richard Dean Winfield, and I'm running for the U.S. Senate to overcome all the blockages of opportunity that are shackling our democracy and putting our lives, our livelihoods, and our freedom in jeopardy in face of the converging crises that now confront us. To fulfill the American dream truly, which we now must do as a matter of life and death, we must finally recognize and fulfill our social rights to a livelihood, to health care, to decent housing, to balanced work and family, to even the playing field between employer and employer, and to have legal care for all so we can fight for our rights. To begin with, now more than ever, we must wipe out unemployment and poverty income with a federal job guarantee, where our government will offer work starting at $20 an hour and keeping pace with inflation and productivity gains to anyone who can't find a job, and to offer equivalent income to those who cannot work. This will provide the floor of economic independence and security we need in order to then confront our health crisis. We need to have Medicare for all, which, unlike Obamacare, offers the same complete coverage to everyone with no copays, no deductibles, no premiums, no bloated overhead from maintaining for-profit private insurance companies, and puts us in a position to bargain with drug companies and healthcare providers to put our costs in line with the rest of the world. We need also to address our housing crisis. We must have a housing guarantee with broadband and ban all evictions, foreclosures, and utility cutoffs. And with everyone having a fair income, we can have mandatory rescheduling of all housing payments. We must balance work and family with public child and elder care, $900 monthly child allowances, and paid family leave, so we can deal with this healthcare crisis and go to work and know that our family members are being cared for. We must also ensure that employees have their rights fully protected with mandatory union elections in all workplaces with multiple workers and 50% of the seats on corporate boards filled by employees elected by their peers. We must also stop having our justice system depend upon how much money an individual has. With legal care for all, we can all have fair access to legal representation in civil and criminal cases. Join me in a new birth of freedom. Vote Winfield for Senate this November. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Winfield, very much. Miss Deborah Jackson. You have 2 minutes for your opening remarks.
Yes, good afternoon, Cherokee County. Thank you so much for having this forum. Yes,
You're
I am
welcome.
Deborah Jackson, the Democratic candidate for the U.S. Senate. As a former mayor, as well as a city council person, I have the kind of experience that is really needed at this point in time to address the many issues that are affecting our community, from housing, education, employment, small business development, immigration, uh, police reform. There's so many things that are impacting us, and it is important that we begin to take positions that really are innovative to find solutions to these problems. Additionally, given the impact that we have had or continue to experience as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, I think it is imperative that elected representatives immediately move to provide stimulus relief to our citizens and particularly to our small businesses. This has been a very challenging and struggling time. I commit that as your next senator, that I will be working diligently to provide solutions to the problems that confront our community. It is time to have new leadership with experience that goes to Washington and not become part of the status quo. We really need to look at creative ideas. And with the experience that I have as having been a mayor and as an elected official, I am the candidate for this position. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and I look forward to sharing more information during this forum.
Thank you so much, Ms. Jackson. Mr. Ed Tarver. Mr. Tarver, you have 2 minutes for your opening comments.
Thank you. My name is Ed Tarver, and I need to tell you at the beginning, I have another commitment that's going to require that I drop, and so I do so without any, with no disrespect to the forum, and I thank you for the opportunity to be on this, a part of this this forum.
You're welcome. Thank you for joining us.
I am Ed Tarver, and I'd be honored to represent you as Georgia's next U.S. Senator. My campaign is for the U.S. Senate is based upon my demonstrated commitment to public service and proven experience. Georgia families have endured extensive hardships over the last decade. The lack of leadership highlights the need for bold, responsive measures to meet the needs of Georgia families. The safety of all Georgians is our #1 priority. However, it is critical that we act quickly to fully reopen Georgia's economy. Had our leaders in Washington used available technology and resources, Georgia would have been more prepared to advocate for its citizens and our economy. Unfortunately, Washington has been more concerned about politics than people. I'm continuing my candidacy in this special election. I trust our democracy. Americans don't quit when they are behind or when times are difficult. We fight back. I believe that we're in a battle for our democracy. I truly believe that this is the most consequential election of my lifetime. It will not be enough for a Democrat to merely make it into a runoff. We must select a Democratic candidate that is prepared to provide bold leadership starting on day one. I will continue to support law enforcement to keep our communities safe. I will fight to hold police accountable for excessive force and misconduct. I will sponsor laws that reverse the devastating effects of mass incarceration. I will fight to overcome systemic racial and religious discrimination that denies far too many the promise of the American dream. I will be the voice of agriculture, our state's #1 economic resource. I will fight to ensure all Georgians have universal access to health care, regardless of their ability to pay. And most importantly, I will champion for all Georgia families. We must restore confidence and trust in our democracy. I believe that my priorities are your priorities. Thank you again for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tarver. And again, I know you have the other commitment. We appreciate your time and understand when you have to leave the call. Next is Brian Slowinski. You have 2 minutes, sir.
Thank you. My name is Brian Slowinski. Brian Slowinski, Brian Slowinski. Quick question for you. I'm seeing somebody else on my screen. Is that the way it's? I have Mr. Buckley on my screen. Sorry to interrupt.
That's okay.
Oh, it kind of threw me off there.
Not a problem.
Can I start over?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Everybody else has been switching over to whenever they speak, and then all of a sudden it's somebody else on my screen.
Not a problem.
Okay, I'll go ahead and start then. Sorry.
That's okay.
Again, my name is Brian Slowinski. Brian Slowinski. Brian Slowinski. I say my name 3 times because, first, I'm the third-party independent consensus unity candidate in this race. Number 2, I've been endorsed by 2 third parties. I've been endorsed by the Libertarian Party of Georgia and recommended by the Constitution Party of Georgia. Third, I am your not a choice on the ballot to protest the 2-party system. Say no to the candidates who have $1 million, who represent the special interest. I don't take their money, never have, never will. I'm running for my 8 children to leave America a better place for our children and generations to come. I am pro-life, pro-Second Amendment, pro-Constitution. I will be the equivalent to Trump on the legislative side, a disruptor to the 2-party establishment. I have sponsored 14 online debates, inviting all the candidates, but again, ignored by the candidates who have millions of dollars. I have sponsored a Cover the Voices, Report All the Choices media tour, where 8 candidates, like myself, challenge the newspapers, radio, and television to cover every candidate on the ballot. So I'm asking you to pencil me in, Brian Slowinski, as a protest vote, a none of the above, nada, not a vote to the 2-party system that is bought and sold. Check out my website at voteslowinski.com. Watch our online debates at Brian Slowinski on Facebook Live. Don't vote for the red side. Don't vote for the blue side. Say no to the division of the left and the right. Instead, vote for the red, white, and blue. America. Multiply these United States of America. I'm Brian Slowinski. Brian Slowinski. Brian Slowinski. I approve this message, and I'm here to ask for your vote on Election Day. God bless you, and may God bless America. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next is Valencia Stovall, and you have 2 minutes.
Thank you for this opportunity. I'm Valencia Stovall, an independent candidate for Senate in the November 3rd special election. I'm a mother of 2, Georgia born and raised. Why am I the best candidate qualified? Because I have 8-30-30. 8 years experience as a proven nonpartisan legislator, 30 years experience as a small business owner, and 30 years experience of bringing resources to our communities. As a current legislator, I developed a $45 million grant to prevent local tax increase. I co-sponsored over a dozen bills to improve the lives of Georgians. I passed a bill to protect special needs students and launched a statewide committee to help small businesses grow. We have been placing band-aids on issues, but the real solutions must come from Washington, D.C. We must truly work together to develop community-driven policies that take us into the future. My focus will be on 3 areas: economic opportunities, where we transform our education system, where every high school student graduates with a certified trade, where parents have the right to decide the best educational setting for their children, and support small business growth, where the classification code is changed to include micro small businesses. Secondly, government efficiency, ensuring that we are fiscally sound by providing affordable and quality health care to all, supporting justice and immigration reforms, and improving our infrastructures. And last, global stewardship, ensuring a modernized global trade program and sustainable environmental practices. I was recently endorsed by IUPAC, which is the International Union for Painters. And I'm number 16 on the ballot, a champion for all Georgians. Stovall, that's all. Visit gostovall.com. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next is Mr. Alan Buckley. You have 2 minutes, sir.
Thank you. I'm Alan Buckley. I'm a financial conservative, independent candidate Our nation has tremendous problems. We desperately need solid, competent, independent leadership free of special interest groups. You won't get that with the major party candidates. My Save Tomorrow campaign is about making the future as good as or better than today. We need to stop destroying the future. So for patriots and young people, I'm your candidate. I offer solutions to all the major problems. They involve reasonable sacrifice. If you're not interested in sacrifice, reasonable sacrifice, not radical. But if you're not interested in that, I'm not your candidate. Let me make that clear. We got major problems. Well, I think our nation's finances are the greatest problem on a long-term basis. We need to get COVID-19 dealt with. And I do propose a package on my website that's in a press release on how I would go about dealing with it. In 2007, when our total debt was under $9 trillion, the GAO, the Government Accountability Office, said our debts were going to spiral out of control. We're now at 27 trillion, 3 times that amount. We haven't balanced a budget since 2001. The most revenue we've ever raised in a year was 3.5 trillion. That was last year. We spent 4.5. We're financially going over the cliff. If that happens, the stock market is going to collapse. Make no mistake about it. I offer solutions to all these problems, including a much simpler tax system that uses algebra to produce balanced budgets in years we're not experiencing a recession or worse. I offer solutions to the healthcare cost problem, market-based solutions that create incentive for people to control costs while not crushing anybody. We need to make healthcare more of a 2-party transaction instead of the 3-party transaction it is, and cut patent life in half for those companies that charge more here than they do abroad. I'm Alan Buckley, and I would appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Buckley. Next is Al Bartell, and you will also have 2 minutes.
Hello, everybody. My name is Al Bartell. As a United States Senator, I will inherit a Georgia that has a bright future. Question becomes, who's going to be included in that future and who's going to be left behind? As a public policy leader for over 25 years, I've noticed a trend. The power brokers in Washington, D.C. want to handpick our leaders here in Georgia. We must take a stand, stop that process cold in its tracks, and never let it happen again. I am interested in, as a United States Senator, having the everyday citizens of urban, suburban, and rural Georgia be included in the public policy process to the same degree as lobbyists, special interest groups, and corporations. We cannot sit back and let Washington, D.C. pick a corporate leader for those of us who live, work, play, and worship here in Georgia. So to the neighborhood leaders, I say to you, do not be dismayed. To the community leaders, I say to you, do not be disappointed. To the faith leaders, I say to you, do not be uninspired. And to the small businesses, I say to you, be strong, and stay involved. I promise you, as a United States Senator here in the state of Georgia, I will never, ever, ever, ever surrender the rights of the citizens of Georgia to pick our leaders and be of the people, for the people, and by the people. We need a candidate to stand for that in this election. My name is Al Bartell, and I am that candidate.
Thank you, Mr. Bartell. Next is Tamara Johnson, and you have 2 minutes as well.
Thank you, Cherokee County Democrats. I am Tamara Johnson-Shealey, your candidate for the United States Senate. I just want to say good morning to my fellow running mates. I know how difficult this is, so I wanted to say good morning to you guys and thank you all for running. I am, again, Tamara Johnson-Shealey. I'm an activist. I fight for political and social change. I'm an advocate. I have been advocating for higher health and safety standards for the beauty and barber industry for many years. And I'm sure many of you can appreciate that if you've gone back to your salons and barbershops in this COVID season. I'm an author. I just completed my 2nd book. I'm an entrepreneur. I just completed my master's degree from Emory University School of Law. I'm well equipped on the issues and I'm ready to serve in Washington. And I'm not going to take my whole 2 minutes because I look forward to diving into the issues. Thank you again, Cherokee County Democrats.
Thank you so much. And with 2 minutes for his opening remarks, Mr. Derrick Grayson.
Well, thank you very much, Cherokee County, and the gracious host for having me on your show.
You're very welcome.
To all of the listeners, my name is Derrick Grayson, and I am running for United States Senate for the great state of Georgia. Many people think that the solution is always government, but the problem resides at the root of what our problems are, and that is government. I know that seems kind of circular, but I won't spend a lot of time talking about myself because I only have 2 minutes, but I will tell you that I'm a Navy veteran, a father. I believe in conservative principles such as the right to life of the unborn child, the preservation of the First and Second Amendments, and more importantly, securing our borders for Americans first, abolishing the Federal Reserve, and passing the fair tax. Money is at the heart of all of our problems. You can find out more about me at graysonforgeorgia.com. But let me begin by painting a picture of our current landscape, and hopefully you will understand why we are where we are today. Voters in America did something different when they elected Donald Trump. The media, however, expected him to implode and lose to Hillary Clinton. They underestimated him, and the coverage that he garnered is what put him over the top, along with his platform, which is America's platform, founded upon in our Constitution. But we've been shortchanged. You may all remember the Never Trump movement. It included many Republicans who now claim that they support President Trump, especially because they are now trying to hold on to their seats. I supported President Trump from the beginning. After President Trump won in 2016, over 40 Republicans resigned their seats. You must consider why. And it was by the grace of God that we held on to the Senate. They have not represented their constituency in earnest. I will, because I actually believe in the Constitution. If you listen to many of them and their political ads, they simply make personal attacks against each other and almost never even mention the Constitution. I will support 100% of the Constitution 100% of the time. I will support President Trump in earnest, and I will not give lip service on conservative values. Don't be shortchanged again. We want Donald Trump to govern by more than just executive orders. We want lasting legislative change that reflects our constitutional principles. So do something different. Vote for Derrick Grayson. Help me, help Trump, help you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grayson. Thank you all so much for giving us just a glimpse into your lives, into issues that are of importance to you, what your backgrounds are, and it helps our voters, I do believe, to have a better feel for who the candidates are. And so we appreciate you sharing. I know that's very hard to do in 2 minutes. And those of you that our timekeeper in the room with me was giving me the flag, I tried to let you finish your thoughts. And so I appreciate that very much. I'm a talker myself, and I know it's very challenging to get that information into those just few seconds. So thank you all so much. I know that many of you, if not all of you, are ready for the questions. And I know that Ms. Tamara Johnson-Shealey referenced that she was ready to dive in and let you know more about her from those responses. And so we're anxious too, as a listening audience, to hear how you're going to respond to today's questions. As I mentioned earlier, there will be 3 questions each. You will each have 2 minutes to respond to those. And again, I will try not to have to cut you off mid-sentence, but if you do go over too far, then I have the capability to mute your microphone, but I would prefer just to wave to you and we'll take care of it from there. Okay, so again, you all will receive the same questions and we will work alphabetically through these responses. So of course, that means then, if I'm looking at my list correctly, that we will be beginning with Mr. Al Bartell. And Mr. Bartell, the question is, and I will repeat it for each of you just to clarify, what is your plan for supporting small business owners as well as our farmers who may not necessarily consider themselves a small business owner, but our small business owners and our farmers?
The plan can no longer be that the one size fits all gets to be made available for small businesses and farmers in Georgia. We must have a diversified plan. As the United States Senator, the first thing I want to do is introduce legislation for the following. The small businesses gets to be separated as urban, suburban, and rural businesses. That the farmers gets to have the family farm be designed as a small businesses so they can turn it over to their family, make sure they're available for capital, and allow for extensions on loans just like a small business can. That will decrease the disappearing of the family farmer in rural Georgia. For suburban, we must have franchises be included in the small business development strategy. They can no longer be regarded as mainstream corporations. And for the urban communities, we must have entrepreneurs be a part of the backbone of the economy. And the only way to do that is to have small business development centers in urban areas. As your United States Senator, I promise to make small businesses, including the family farms, the mainstay and the cornerstone of the emerging economy in Georgia for the dawn of the 21st century.
Thank you, Mr. Bartell. Mr. Buckley, the same question. What is your plan for supporting small business owners as well as farmers?
Well, I am an attorney, CPA, do a lot of tax work, and I do a lot of fighting against the federal government, including fighting over-regulation that I abhor. Over the course of 3 years, have come up with a much simpler tax system that would not only greatly help businesses, it would help our economy tremendously. Basically, I get rid of the income tax, the individual and the corporate, but add an X-rate VAT and expand the FICA and the SECA taxes to be, FICA would be X and the SECA would be 2X. X balances the budget. I told you we have huge financial problems. Every year we're not in a recession or worse. We balance the budget. I have 5 credits against the FICA/SECA tax that make it the combined system progressive. How does this help the economy? All corporations become S corporations. So corporations wouldn't pay tax, but everything would flow through. And so all shareholders would pay tax on their income. And then I basically disallow deductions of wages to the extent the US sales percent exceeds the US wage percent. So if 60% of the company's sales are in the US, but only 20% of its wages, 60 minus 20 is 40. 40% of the wages would be non-deductible. That would cause a lot of jobs to come back to the US. That would help all sorts of businesses. On the healthcare front, I propose market-based solutions. We only allow tax subsidies for high deductible health plans and HSAs. That creates incentive for people to control costs without busting anybody in the process. We cut patent life in half for drug companies that sell for more here than they charge more than they charge more here than they charge abroad, and reduce regulation by voting for judges such as Gorsuch and Kavanaugh, who are fair and do want to restrict the government's powers. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next is Derrick Grayson. And Mr. Grayson, I'll repeat the question. What is your plan for supporting small business owners and farmers?
Thank you for the question. Quite simple. Since I am a conservative constitutionalist, I understand that it is government's involvement that has created many of our problems. And I hear the question often asked, what legislation would I support? I would rather start with, what legislation are we going to get rid of? I want lower taxes. I want the elimination of taxes for small businesses. I want the easing of regulations, and I want the elimination of some regulations. When it comes to our farmers, why are we paying them in some instances not to produce? Why are we facilitating trade deals that allow us to import from other countries what can be grown here. It is that type of government involvement that has created the problems for our small businesses as well as for our farmers. So my position is not to always go to new legislation, more handouts, more payouts. Let's start with pulling government back. They only have 18 or 21 enumerated powers, depending on how you count. And what we see government involved in today is what has got us to where we are today. Let us step back, allow farmers to farm, and allow small businesses to operate without the overbearingness of government with legislation, taxation, and trade deals that only end up hurting the people here in our country. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next is Ms. Deborah Jackson. The same question, Ms. Jackson. What is your plan for supporting small business owners and farmers?
Okay, the cursor keeps moving around. Okay,
That's
thank you. Yeah, I believe it's that government has a very important role to play in terms of supporting both our small businesses as well as our farmers. I think primarily it's important to recognize that we need to have different definitions of small businesses, because right now, according to the Small Businesses Administration, a small business is considered someone that has, less than 1,000 employees, whereas in many of our communities, basically what we have are micro businesses of businesses that have 5 employees or less. And so, for example, in terms of the aid that was provided during the pandemic, many of our small businesses were not able to benefit from that. And small businesses really are the economic engine and lifeblood of our communities. So it's important that we develop programs that would actually support the smallest of those businesses. As relates to farmers, I think it's really important that we encourage the support for the family farms. I think that urban agriculture has really had a very negative impact in terms of the food supply and its distribution, because we see that people are lining up in lines for food pantries while at the same time farmers are dumping food or plowing the ground under. So we want to have support that allows for a good distribution system so that people are able to eat. We should not have a problem of hunger in this country. We are able to grow enough food. And also we need to support in our urban areas, the urban agricultural initiatives that would help support addressing the issue of food insecurity. So it really is a world, I would say that, having a focus on some of the smaller components, both as relates to the business community as well as to the farmers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Tamara Johnson-Shealey, the same question. What is your plan for supporting small business and farmers?
Thank you for that question. I was a small business owner for many years, and I look back on that time and thinking about COVID-19 and what we could have done differently as a nation with our small businesses is funding for our small businesses, not loans, grants. We were able to bail out big businesses in this COVID season. So we should have bailed out our small businesses first. So grants and not loans to our small businesses. PPP monies, we saw where many people, it was more advantageous for them to stay home and get unemployment because the wages are so low. We need to figure out how to make sure that people are compensated accordingly so that they want to go back to work. They look forward to going back to work. So I definitely would want to address that. Thinking more further into what we could have done for small businesses, giving away free PPE equipment, masks and gloves and cleaning supplies. Anything that we could have done to invest in making sure that our employees are safe and our customers feel safe. Because what I don't want to see and what I I'm happy about that didn't happen here in this state, that we did not shut our economy down to the extent that other states were shut down. Too many people just cannot afford to be home. We've lost so many small businesses. So I'm glad to see that we were able to stay open, and we're continuing to, figure it out and get it right in this COVID season. With our farmers, I traveled 3,600 miles around the state of Georgia in the month of August. And the one thing I found was that how rich in resources we are. We have land on top of land. It was just land everywhere. And I just could see opportunity there. We have a homeless crisis in this country. We can grow food. We can be such a resource to not just Georgians, but to the rest of the nation. So I saw opportunity for our farmers to really be able to feed America. So that's really how I think we could really support our small businesses and our farmers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Brian Slowinski, the same question. What is your plan for supporting small business and farmers?
Thank you for the question. I think we need to look at less government, more freedom for farmers and small business. We need government out of the way. How do we get government out of the way? First thing we got to do is cut spending and taxes. And I would point out all the different ways that are not in our Constitution under Article 1, Section 8, the enumerated powers. I would eliminate the income tax. I would eliminate the corporate tax. I would eliminate on the federal level the departments of education, transportation, labor, agriculture, energy, commerce, interior. I'd cut our defense back. I'd block grant Medicare, Medicaid back to the states. Means test, price index, and raise the retirement age for Social Security, and eliminate a lot of departments. So first thing you do is you eliminate a lot of the taxes and spending that's going on in this country. The second thing you need to do is grow the economy. How do you grow the economy? Well, we need to get away from our debt-based monetary system and get back to this system we originally had in this country, which is basically a wealth-based system. If we did that, if we end the Federal Reserve and get back to a wealth-based system instead of the fiat debt-based system, we could have this wealth currency. We could utilize building more roads and bridges, working on our infrastructure, bringing rural broadband to help all farmers out to rural Georgia and rural America. If we did that, we'd increase the amount of building going on in this country by rebuilding roads and bridges and infrastructure that is needed, that is sorely needed. By doing that, we help everyone because the dollars will multiply because of that. And that's what I would do to help small business and farmers. Get rid of all the taxes all the income taxes and the corporate taxes. That would allow them to do more with the money that they earn, their productivity, and then expand our economy through using a wealth-based system, getting away from this debt-based system that creates all these bubbles in the stock market and real estate. That's how you help America, and that's how you help the American people. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Stovall, what is your plan for supporting small businesses and farmers?
Thank you. So as a current small business owner and also legislator, I serve on the Small Business Development Committee on the House side, Economic Development and Tourism, also on the Education Committee. And one of the things I've noticed traveling across the state and being involved is that we could definitely utilize our small business development centers a lot more, which are located on our four-year colleges. Also reclassifying our small business to micro small businesses. Supporting here in Georgia, we have a great tax incentive package that's through our Department of Economic Development for new and existing businesses, which I think are going to really be needed, that support, because of what's happened with COVID-19. We also need to increase our apprenticeship and internship programs, similar to what Central Education Center has in Coweta County. They have a German apprenticeship program, and that also helps with our students being prepared once they come out of high school. Also a comprehensive plan for retraining our Georgians. So adding additional support to our technical colleges, which are tasked to be able to do that. I served on the House Study Committee for the revitalization of the Atlanta State Farmers Market and got a chance to really hear deep down about those issues that the farmers are facing. And one of those, of course, is dealing with our infrastructure with broadband. Increasing that technology is going to be essential because it will increase their productivity and decrease their labor needs that they have for their workers on the farm. Increasing resources to our schools to be able to, for more CTAE programs. I mentioned earlier about certified trade. Even modernizing our global trade program is going to be essential. I think that once we look at those needs that our small businesses have, whether they're the farmers, which is our largest income that comes to revenue that comes here in the state, being able to do that, I think that we'll be able to move forward with what's needed here in Georgia, making sure that we have a robust economy, even during COVID and even after COVID.
Thank you. And Mr. Richard Winfield, this same question. What is your plan for supporting small businesses and farmers?
Yeah, I think the biggest threat to small business is twofold. On the one hand, it's big business and the increasing monopolization of big business, which is a threat to all of our prosperity and involves, as we all know, gigantic firms that have no unionization, that pay their workers next to a minimum wage, and are really destroying much of our small businesses. On the other hand, the greatest threat to small business is the fact that we tolerate mass poverty and unemployment, which means a very stagnant consumer demand. And we need to end that with a federal job guarantee and fair minimum wages starting at $20 an hour so that everyone has adequate purchase power so businesses can flourish. We have to remember that 82% of small businesses employ no one. And that is one of the reasons why the CARE package did not help small businesses, because it required of them that they get aid only if they keep people on payroll, but most have no payroll. Now we need to end payroll taxes. We need to end corporate taxes. We need to put the whole federal tax burden on the top 1% and 10% through wealth and income taxes. And we also need to separate healthcare insurance from employment. So neither businesses have to chip into that, nor need employees feel that their healthcare coverage is at risk if they change their employment or lose their jobs. The same thing applies to pensions. We have to increase Social Security benefits and have them go automatically independently of payroll taxes, supported by taxation on the top 10%, so that again, that gets lifted off the backs of businesses and everyone has a secure elder life awaiting them. Now, with regard to agriculture, we have to recognize that agribusiness dominates agriculture. Small farms are really a thing of the past that have virtually been eliminated. And we have to take into account what agribusiness is up to, because it is flooding animals with antibiotics that put our health in danger. They're using techniques that are ruining our water supplies, that are polluting areas, and that are diminishing the amount of variety of crops and livestock, which puts us in danger from future disease and so forth. We have to stop that. And we also have to recognize that with the Green New Deal, we can provide a boon to agriculture with having a new development of energy supplies from biofuels. And I think that is going to be an important part of the future of agriculture in Georgia and everywhere else. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Winfield. Thank you all for sharing your thoughts. We are a Chamber of Commerce, so you knew that questions would be related to business, I'm sure. The next question is going to relate back to business, but it's going to have to do with the COVID-19 pandemic. The question is, if elected, what would you do to help businesses that have been impacted by the pandemic? And also, do you feel that it is still a serious threat to public health? Let me repeat that, it's quite long. If elected, what would you do to help businesses that have been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic? And do you feel that it is still a serious threat to public health? We will begin with Mr. Bartell.
The COVID-19 is definitely still a serious threat to public health. And what we have to do for small businesses in particular is expand the support system in the same way that we have now expanded the public health system. When COVID-19 hit, we saw that in rural, suburban, and urban communities, we had to expand the support system for hospitals, for care institutions, and for communities. We now must do the same thing for small businesses. Your chamber, as a matter of fact, can provide one of the leading models for small business support by having small business development centers to have people deal with the decreasing customer base, to have small business development centers, to have businesses deal with how to expand their market share, to have small business development centers supporting people in transitioning the different styles of management that's going to take for the COVID-19 and the post-COVID-19, to have small business development centers be designed, developed, and supported by chambers of commerce. So your Chamber of Commerce is very well positioned to take the lead on this matter and be able to provide small business development centers. As a United States Senator, one of the first pieces of public policy that I'm introducing is a small business development center initiative, particularly for the Southeast region of America. And you can count on me to keep my promise in doing that.
Thank you, Mr. Bartell. Mr. Buckley, if elected, what would you do to help businesses that have been impacted by the pandemic? And do you feel it is still a serious public health threat?
Yes, I think it is a serious public health threat. Obviously, for some people, it doesn't really bother them much at all, but for others, it'll kill them. And so because of the fact that a lot of the population potentially can be killed, it's a serious health threat. Again, the tax system I propose would help bring a lot of jobs back to the U.S. because a lot of companies have a substantial portion of their sales here, but they push jobs abroad to save money. If we disallow deductions for those foreign wages, they would come back, especially on a pass-through situation like I talked about. I would support reducing regulation and vote for judges who treat the federal government fairly in court. In my mind, there are two types of federal judges, those who favor the federal government and those who are fair. And I think Gorsuch and Kavanaugh are two fair judges. I generally dislike Democratic appointees as federal judges because they support big government and favor the federal government, having experienced that a number of times. As far as current relief, I support, although I'm in favor of absolutely getting our finances under control. I'm the only candidate whose numbers work in the whole race. You'll hear all this talk about we're going to cut this and cut that and increase this and increase that. My numbers work because they use algebra. It's just simple math. And I propose continuing the PPP through the end of the year, cutting professional practices like lawyers and doctors out of it who didn't need it, and continuing unemployment benefits on a very targeted basis. So, you know, basically a general rule would be a 70% benefit, but some people would get 100%. So, and I don't want to go on beyond my time limit because that would be selfish. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Grayson, if elected, what would you do to help businesses that have been impacted by the pandemic? And do you feel it is still a serious threat to public health?
The pandemic, as I call it, is a serious health risk to those who are most vulnerable. I've done a lot of research on this. Typically, healthy people, this disease is not as deadly as it is being made out to be, but that is beside the point. It does and can have serious impact upon those with pre-existing conditions. So those are my thoughts on COVID. As far as the businesses go, I, for one, was not in favor or have never been in favor in massive borrowing from the Federal Reserve to push out, because that's just more debt on our economy. However, I made an exception for the simple fact that it was government that created this economic crisis by shutting down businesses, preventing people from sending their kids to school so that they could go to work, putting people in a position where they had no daycare for their children, just creating mass hysteria. Florida has reopened and has one of the lowest rates of any state. And, you know, they've gone back to work. Governor Kemp did somewhat of a half measure here in Georgia, and we are still recovering. So I am not opposed to a second round of funding because there are still places where this is a problem. So what would I do as a senator? I would, one, ensure that the truth is actually put out concerning Corona. Number two, I would ensure that people in these states that are creating these economic crises are dealt with. They have no business shutting down a business that is willing to open and keeping people that are willing to patronize that business from going. Now, those are just, I'm this guy that believes in liberty and freedom, and I think people are smart enough to do what is necessary to protect themselves. If I've got COPD, then I don't need to be at a large gathering around a bunch of people that I don't know. But I'm a healthy male, and I go where I want to go, and I have not been impacted by this, by the grace of God, because I am in a field where I can work from home. But that is not the case with everyone else. So I would want the truth to be brought forth, and I would want politicians that are shuttering businesses and creating this havoc to be held accountable for what they're doing so that people can get back to work as they have done in Florida and here in the great state of Georgia. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grayson. Ms. Jackson, if elected, what would you do to help businesses that have been impacted by the pandemic? And do you feel that it is still a serious public health threat?
Yes, unfortunately, the pandemic is still a serious health threat. And primarily because I think that both as a state and as a country, that we did not take the appropriate steps in the beginning to really fully understand the nature of the pandemic and the kind of impact that it has had. So we've seen, you know, disparate results across the country. And so that is really a problem. I think that there needs to be, you know, if you factor in the situation locally, but there needs to be a firm national strategy that provides support and assistance for the businesses, you know, that would have allowed them to continue to operate, or to operate much sooner than, you know, than what we find ourselves in right now. So I would say that the plan would be to provide the necessary personal protective equipment, you know, now known as PPE, for the businesses, and particularly the smaller businesses that, you know, would need that support and assistance to be able to operate. And that we really have to follow the public health guidelines so that everyone is safe. I mean, no one wants to stay locked up or have their children learning virtually, but we need to take the proper steps to make sure that people are safe. I think the focus has been in terms of having the legislature provide or to protect businesses from any liability from people who may contract COVID, as opposed to providing the necessary support for businesses to be able to operate in a safe manner. So that would be my plan, to provide the necessary equipment, also to help the businesses in some cases that in terms of what might be an opportunity for them to rethink how they deliver their business, because it's not going back to the way things were operating in March for the foreseeable future until we really get this pandemic under control.
Thank you so much. Next, Ms. Johnson-Shealey, if elected, what would you do to help businesses that have been impacted by the pandemic? And do you feel that it is still a serious public health threat?
Great question. Again, I'll go back to my first answer with funding, and that would be grants and not loans to our small businesses, PPP and PPEs. So that will be back to my first question. But to answer the second part, do I feel like it's still a serious threat? I do. Yes, I do. However, I'm going to halfway agree with Mr. Derrick Grayson up there. I do wonder what happened to our flu numbers. So I do have some some questions about where the numbers actually lie. COVID-19 is not going anywhere. I don't want to see our economy here in Georgia be shut down again. That would not be good for any of us. Those of us that are employed people and those that actually are our workers. I do not want to see this economy shut down again. And how do we acclimate into this new COVID environment? How do we retrofit our businesses? I see where Chick-fil-A has expanded. Some of the Chick-fil-A's have expanded their parking lots so that they can include more drive-up service and more opportunities for people to sit outside. So how do we retrofit our businesses to meet the demands of this COVID season? Where you might be in a lease that you may not need as much square footage as you have, and you want to downsize, and you can still remain in business, you just may have to downsize. How do we help these small businesses to really stay in business, or just stay in business in this COVID season? Whatever it takes to save businesses, and particularly small businesses, I'm willing I think we have to be very creative with how we address this. I don't think there's a one size fit all. And I want to see us do not close down our economy.
Thank you. Mr. Slowinski, the same question. If elected, what would you do to help businesses that have been impacted by the pandemic? And do you feel that it is still a serious public health threat?
Thank you for the question. Yes, it is a very serious health threat. My wife is an intensive care doctor. She was actually deployed to New York City to help set up hospitals up there and take care of COVID patients. So as far as what's going on in Washington, D.C., I would support relief in this national emergency, but if we provide relief, we must pay for it. We must have the actual taxes and or cuts in spending to pay for that relief. Everything that went wrong with America's response to the pandemic was very predictable and preventable. Chronic underfunding of public health neutered America's ability to prevent the pathogen's spread. A bloated, inefficient government-run healthcare system left our hospitals ill-prepared for the ensuing wave of sickness. The United States has little excuse for its inattention. COVID-19 is bad enough in every way. It spreads quickly enough to overload hospitals, but slowly enough the statistics don't spike too late. These traits have made the virus harder to control, but they've also softened the pandemic's punch. We should have spent those crucial early weeks in January 2020 mass producing tests to detect the virus, ask US-based companies to manufacture protective equipment and ventilators, and otherwise prepare the nations for the worst. Travel bans by President Trump were ahead of the curve, but we need to create a surveillance network that would allow every hospital in every US major city to quickly track new viruses through genetic sequencing. Local hospitals would be more effective in developing their own diagnostic tests. We need to be better prepared. We need to make sure that we have those rapid tests available for those frontline workers and not being used by politicians up in Washington, D.C. That's how we get ahead of the game. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Stovall, the same question. What would you do if elected to help businesses that have been impacted by the pandemic? And do you feel that it is still a public health threat?
Yes, it definitely is a public health threat here in Georgia and even nationally and internationally. The first thing I would do as a U.S. Senator is create a task force with business owners and managers to find solutions on how to economically rebound during and after COVID-19. I believe the solutions are there with the business owners. That's why we're entrepreneurs. We look at what are issues and problems and we find solutions. That's why we open up our businesses. And then look at what we already have in place and how do we restructure it? How can we make it better? I mentioned earlier about the Quick Start program. That's one of the incentives that we have through our Department of Economic Development that's ran by the Technical College of Georgia. And so that's one. I mentioned earlier about the small business development centers that are located on each one of our four-year colleges, being able to expand that. Also a comprehensive plan to retrain in Georgians. And that's why that task force is very important. Many of the businesses have gone out, like restaurants and some of the others, they're not going to reopen back up. So how do we train those individuals so that they can no longer have to depend on the unemployment so they can get back to work? Also, government efficiency is going to be very important. Government efficiency with making sure that we're working with our local, our state, and federal level. There has to be better communication that's done. And also, again, reclassifying that micro small business classification is going to be important for any additional funding that comes down to the state for our businesses, so that those small businesses can be able to rebound back, because they're the ones at the heart of, in many of our communities, that are actually hiring the people that live in our community. And unless they're able to be rebooted back up and stabilized, then we're going to continue to see the high unemployment rates. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, Mr. Winfield, the same question. If elected, what would you do to help businesses that have been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic? And do you feel that it is still a serious threat to public health?
Well, first of all, the White House is not the only hot spot in America. Athens, Georgia, where I live, like every other university city in America, is a hot spot. And today, new infections from COVID-19 once again passed beyond 50,000 people, which means that 1,500 Americans were given a death sentence today, which is awaiting them because we are not containing the COVID-19 pandemic. But we can contain it within a month and create an environment where business can flourish. All we have to do is to ramp up testing of everyone, have contact tracing of anyone who tests positively, and have mandatory monitored quarantining of those who are infected. And if we do that in a month's time, we could have the pandemic completely in check. Meanwhile, we have to give businesses employee protection. We have to give them funds to keep people on payroll. If they're unable to make enough to do that, we have to provide them with funds so they can meet their basic costs, and do that as long as necessary until we can have a full recovery. And of course, businesses can't flourish if people are broke. So we have to ensure that everyone has decent income. We have to put the unemployed to work, which we can with a federal job guarantee. We have to end poverty wages. All of these things are good for business. We need maximum buying power. And we're not going to get out of this crisis unless we do two things at once: contain the pandemic and ensure also that everyone has access to medical care, and at the same time, provide everyone with economic security. That includes businesses big and small, and their employees and their consumers. And that's the way out of this tunnel. And it requires action at a federal level, because only the federal government has the resources to provide that universal testing, contact tracing, and quarantining, and to provide the financial support businesses and employees need.
Thank you. I hope that each of you and your families have been healthy during the pandemic, and I wish that continued healthiness as you proceed through the remainder of the campaign, and not just to that point, not just when November 3rd has come and gone, but you will continue to see health and prosperity in all of your lives and in your families as well. For the third question, you will receive, of course, the same time, 2 minutes. We'll begin again with Mr. Bartell. And that question is, what is your opinion on the Green New Deal, and how will it affect businesses and the agriculture industry in Georgia? What is your opinion on the Green New Deal, and how will it affect businesses and the agriculture industry in Georgia?
The Green New Deal is a global invitation for people to get involved with what it's going to take to impact climate change and the effects of climate change. That invitation is interacted with differently by the Republican Party than it is the Democratic Party. The Libertarians have their own ideas about the Green New Deal. As an independent candidate, it's going to take all of us sitting at the table. There's no one size fits all. The plan that's been put by the Democratic Party has holes in it about small business development and supporting economies of scale. The plan that's been put together by the Republican Party has holes in it with public health issues and public health management. The plan has been put together by the Libertarians to use it as an opportunity to shrink and dismantle government, that's not going to work for everybody. And so as a United States Senator, the primary relationship to the Green New Deal must be managed inside of the subcommittees and full committees of the United States Senate. Let's have the Democratic Party put their proposal on the table. Let's have the Republican Party put their proposal on the table. Let's have the Libertarians put their proposal on the table. My trust is not in the Green New Deal. My trust is in Americans. As America, we're clear about the capacity to work together. The thing that has dismantled that is that the power brokers have chose to have corporations set the tone. I'm interested in having urban, suburban, and rural leaders have the same access to public policy as lobbyists, special interest groups, and corporations. We have to have a candidate in this race who's committed to that, and I am that candidate.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Buckley, what is your opinion on the Green New Deal and how will it affect businesses and the agriculture industry in Georgia?
It's my understanding there are floating versions of the Green New Deal, at least that's according to Joe Biden. Just before this forum started, I sat in on a talk by the Committee for Responsible Federal Budget. They track the federal budget, and they said that basically, in addition to the debt that's already planned, and I'll just show you this little poster that explains how bad things are. They said Biden's plans would add another 5.6 trillion to this already bad picture, and Trump would add about 5 trillion, his tax cuts and spending increases. I believe in protecting the environment. Again, my campaign is the Save Tomorrow campaign. And I love being outdoors. I love exercising. And part of preserving the future is preserving the environment. So I offer solutions to these problems. Again, look at buckleyforsenate.org. Look at all these other websites. You want to see solutions that work? Take the gas tax. We've had it for decades at 18.4 cents per gallon. Electric vehicles don't pay it. I propose an energy tax to replace the gas tax. And the energy tax varies based on the dirtiness of the fuel. So the dirtier a fuel is, the more tax you have to pay. The cleaner a fuel is, the less tax you have to pay. And all electricity is not equal. Electricity that comes from solar, from hydro, and from wind is very clean. In contrast, electricity that comes from coal is just as dirty as gasoline. All this is covered on my website. Natural gas is about half as clean as gasoline. So we set the budget for the infrastructure at the beginning of the year, and we set the energy rates. And this is a practical solution because it works for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Grayson, what is your opinion on the Green New Deal and how will it affect businesses and the agriculture industry in Georgia?
My opinion of the Green New Deal is that it is absolutely insane and that it would be disastrous for America across the board. I agree with Mr. Bartell when he says corporations want to control everything, which is essentially what's going on. But two things. One, I am often amazed at intelligent people that think that government has resources of its own. It does not. The resources that government has access to is the blood, sweat, and tears of the American citizen. They have no money of their own. Whatever they spend, they have taken from us, or they have borrowed it from the Federal Reserve, and that debt is placed on our backs. What does government do when they get involved? Look at the Department of Education. DeKalb County, I am a Kiwanis advisor for schools here in DeKalb County. Almost all of the Black schools in DeKalb County have either a D or an F rating. And we want the government to get involved in more things. What did they do with the prison industrial complex? The crime bill of 1984 that Joe Biden gave us that he brags about. What did that do? That saw the destruction of many, many Black males on 3 strikes and you're out. I could go on and on and on. There is no way on God's green earth that I would support any more government intrusion into what is going on on that massive scale. We saw what they did with Obamacare. And the last point I would make is this should be a state's issue to decide. The federal government has long since overstepped its bounds, and that is what has allowed the 1%ers, the corporations, to go in and own everything and keep the politicians that they want in office recycled year after year after year after year. So no Green Deal. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next is Ms. Jackson. Ms. Jackson, I understand you have an appointment right after you will make your comments or your response to this question. We appreciate you being on with us today. And I would like to give you the opportunity to not only answer the question, but you can include your closing remarks at the same time. And then we understand that you'll need to slip off of the call. So again, your question is, what is your opinion on the Green New Deal and how will it affect businesses and the agriculture industry in Georgia?
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you for understanding.
Yes.
So as Mr. Bartell has indicated, I mean, there are different versions of the Green New Deal. For me, I see it as a call to rethink how we address the issue of climate change. You know, just last year, and it didn't get as much publicity as I thought it should have, but we saw our young people, and these were high school and middle school students around the world, calling for adults to take a position and do something about climate change. And so for me, the Green New Deal is a way of how do we rethink our approach to dealing with the environment, as well as the economy, because the pandemic has exposed all of the discrepancies that exist for our businesses that we've talked about earlier, for various communities, as well as for agriculture. So I support the concept of a Green New Deal. I think it's something that needs to be further defined, but I think it provides a great opportunity because the approaches that we've taken in the past to deal with the environment have not really worked. Our waters are continuing to get polluted. Our air quality is really problematic. And in some communities, you have environmental racism that has been taking place because of the siting of polluting industries in communities of color. So it's an opportunity for us to develop a different approach. So I would say that I am in support of developing a Green New Deal because it will help create new jobs that we're going to need in the future, providing opportunities to train our young people so that they have livable wages to support their families and support the communities. So in closing, I would just like to say, well, again, thank you for this opportunity to participate in this forum with the Cherokee County Chamber of Commerce and the Farm Bureau. And again, I am Deborah Jackson. As an elected official, as an attorney, and as someone who has actually been involved in implementing and developing policies, that I am the best qualified candidate for the U.S. Senate. I ask you to visit deborahforgeorgia.com to get more information. Remember that early voting actually starts on October the 12th. And so it's important that the citizens come out and vote. But this is not a popularity contest. It's about electing qualified people who will serve the interests of the community and looking at people who have actually demonstrated experience to do that. So again, I ask for your support, I ask for your vote, and thank you again for this opportunity to participate. Everyone have a great day.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. The same question for Ms. Johnson-Shealey. What is your opinion on the Green New Deal and how will it affect businesses and the agriculture industry in Georgia?
Thank you for the question. I absolutely support the Green New Deal. We must must tackle climate change, hands down. We must wean this country from fossil fuels, and we must curb the planet warming, greenhouse gas emissions, and we need new high-paying jobs. So I see this as an opportunity to create and evolve, address the widening racial wealth gap with making sure that we employ people who really need these jobs, retrain and employ them. I know someone mentioned that this might be this is a state issue, but how can it be when we share air and water? So this is definitely a job for the federal government. We just have to figure it out as a nation. This equates to our health and our wealth as United States citizens. So I absolutely support the Green New Deal.
Thank you. Mr. Slowinski, what is your opinion on the Green New Deal and how will it affect businesses and the agriculture industry in Georgia?
Thank you for the question. Well, my answer is no to the Green New Deal. We don't have the money. It's not a well thought out program. Better idea would be, for example, to start stopping the fires like we have in California. So how do you stop that? With better forest management and getting rid of all the undergrowth and stop all these fires that are polluting our atmosphere. That would be a better way to do it. Keep working on clean water, clean air. One way we could really help our country is by legalizing industrial hemp. Hemp is diesel and diesel is hemp. That would help farmers to grow their own fuel and able to become self-sufficient and independent of any government or government subsidy. Another way to help this country would be to get us back to a wealth-based monetary system, get us away from our debt-based monetary system. Because by doing that, we don't have the debt, we don't have the bubbles like we have in real estate or that we have in our stock market. We could build more roads, bridges, we could build more dams, utilize that hydroelectric power. We are not even coming close to using the amount of hydroelectric power we could use in all our river systems, especially the Mississippi River and the Missouri and Ohio basin. If we worked on things like that, we would help to make our own green deal. But the Green Deal would be basically by having cleaner air and cleaner water and cleaner energy use. That's my Green Deal. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Stovall, what is your opinion on the Green New Deal and how it will affect businesses and the agriculture industry in Georgia?
Yes, so there are different versions of the Green New Deal. I think the most important part is that we have to work together to develop these community-driven policies that must be sustainable environmental practices, which is one of my 3 focus areas as the next U.S. Senator. But they must be nonpartisan and not driven by either party. We do need renewable energy and resources for it to be efficient. As far as our farmers and in the agriculture department, they are dependent upon our environment. And so we must look at how do we reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and most importantly, educating our community, starting with our youth. One of the initiatives I did recently was a program where I collaborated with the National Wildlife Federation, and we had high school students that created an environmental assessment survey. And it was student driven, and they actually went out and surveyed the community as to what they would like to see and how the climate has affected them. And so I think once we are able to start educating our community, like I said, starting with the youth, then we will see much better as we move into each year as far as environmental stewardship. So that clean water, air, healthy, affordable food, all of those are important, of course, to our small businesses or to our businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Winfield, what is your opinion on the Green New Deal and how will it affect businesses and the agriculture industry in Georgia?
First of all, agriculture is the industry most directly threatened by global heating, which is submerging agriculturally valuable delta regions the world over, threatening water supplies, causing droughts like we haven't seen before, storms with an intensity that we also haven't seen before, and destruction of glaciers and fires out of control. Scientists are agreed we have to stop greenhouse emissions by 2030. And to do that, only the federal government, with international cooperation, can achieve that goal by telling the fossil fuel industry, the most wealthy industry in human history, that they must reinvent themselves by 2030 as a 100% clean energy industry. And they have the reserves to do that. In addition, we can also provide whatever public investment is necessary to make the transition, where we use clean energy like wind, solar, biofuels, Generation 4 nuclear plants, new technologies that allow us to use methane in a way where there's absolutely no greenhouse gas emissions. All of these make it completely practical. It's much easier than getting to the moon within 10 years. It's just a question of political will. The New Deal side is that we have to ensure that no one's livelihood will be put in jeopardy by making this transition. We have to guarantee jobs at a fair wage to anyone in the fossil fuel industry that we need to put out of business by 2030, unless, of course, it reinvents itself as a clean energy business. So if you want to call this a new Green Deal, this is something absolutely necessary for the future of humanity. It requires mobilization at the federal and international level. And anyone who ignores this crisis and the intense challenge we have is really ignoring our futures. And it will be a boon to agriculture, because biofuels are going to be a tremendous new avenue of agricultural production in Georgia and everywhere else. Airplanes can fly on biofuels. Internal combustion engines can run on biofuels. There are no limitations to what we can be doing when we make the transition to clean energy. And this will be a boon to agriculture if properly handled. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you all for sharing with Georgia's voters today. I know that you could have chosen to be in many different places this afternoon campaigning, and you have chosen to be on this virtual call. This is the first time in the history for our organization or Farm Bureau that this event has ever been held virtually, except for the one that we did just a couple of days ago, of course. But prior to 2020, our forums were face-to-face, and we were accustomed to meeting people and shaking hands and getting to know you. So thank you for venturing down this Zoom platform journey with us today. We want to give you an opportunity to share your closing remarks before we end our recording that will again, of course, be shared with you all so that you can post that on your websites and on your social media platforms, as will be the same for, of course, the Chamber and the Cherokee County Farm Bureau. So we're going to give each of you 1 minute for your closing remarks, and appreciate you adhering to that time frame with us so that we can get you to your other appointments of the day. So Mr. Bartell, if you would, please share your closing remarks.
Coming. So I am pleased to be a part of this candidates forum. I am the U.S. Senate candidate that will, on day one, ensure that urban, suburban, and rural leaders have the same access to public policy as lobbyists, special interest groups, and corporations. We're clear that the lobbyists suppress the initiatives of urban leaders. We're clear that special interest groups suppress the initiative of suburban leaders. And we're clear that corporations suppress the interests of the farming community. And so I just want you to know that I will be your senator to usher in a new day for Georgia. And in the meantime, may the Bill of Rights protect you and the good Lord bless you. And I'll see you on the campaign trail. Good day, everybody.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bartell. We appreciate you being with us. Mr. Buckley, your closing remarks?
Yeah, once again, my Save Tomorrow campaign is about making the future as good as or better than today. We've got huge problems. We need a senator who will represent all Georgians, not just Black Georgians, and not just white Georgians. My campaign provides solutions to the problem. That's where it differs from almost every other campaign in this race. The greatest problem, as I already showed you, please take a look at this. This is the end of the world as we know it. It's on my website, along with solutions to this massive problem. The debts are going to spiral out of control. Our own government has told us that. And so why in my yard signs say this? It's because fix the finances now. That's what I'm about. That's my main point. That's my main way of helping save the future, but it involves all sorts of subtopics, including a better tax system, reducing healthcare costs, and being smarter about our military. BuckleyForSenate.org. I would appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Buckley, and we appreciate your time today as well. Mr. Grayson, your closing remarks?
Yes, thank you for having me. And I just want to say to the voters, you hear a lot of candidates and politicians talk about more government. More government is our problem. What we need is less government. And second to that, you hear a lot of politicians and candidates talk about spending. Understand something. Somebody has to pay for it. And more spending simply means more debt on your backs. I am the candidate that understands, as with the Bible, if I may use that as a reference, when you don't follow godly principles, the only thing that is before you is nothing but a fall. And when you have candidates and politicians who care very little for the sanctity of the Constitution or maintaining a fidelity to it, that limiting document that says what government can do, essentially protecting the citizen from overreach, then we end up with what we have today, and that is why we are where we are. And I will back up Mr. Buckley on what he just said. The reason I am so against all of this spending, and many politicians nor candidates will talk about this because many simply don't even understand it, but they talk about their education and experience. If we don't fix our monetary system, which we inherited from back in 1913, nothing else matters. Our Federal Reserve must be, and our out of control spending must be stopped. Do something different. Vote for Derrick Grayson. I will get the federal government out of your pocket and out of your backyard. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grayson. Ms. Johnson-Shealey, your closing remarks?
Thank you. I want to thank you, Cherokee County Chamber of Commerce, for giving us the opportunity. There's a lot of great candidates on this ballot, but I am Tamara Johnson-Shealey, your candidate for the United States Senate. And we can keep sending the same people to Washington, politicians beholden to big donors, big corporations, and political favors. We have enough of them. We need to send people to Washington who are going there to work for you, who will meet your demands and fulfill your expectations. Politicians that are different and politicians who think different. You have a lot of candidates to choose from in this race, but I am your candidate for the United States Senate. Again, I am Tamara Johnson-Shealey. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Slowinski, your closing remarks? You're still muted.
Hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. My name is Brian Slowinski. Brian Slowinski. Brian Slowinski. I'm the third party candidate in this race. I'm the consensus unity candidate. I'm the one who's been endorsed by two third parties, the Libertarian Party, as well as the Constitution Party. I am your nada. I'm the different candidate in this race. I am your nada choice to protest the two-party system. Say no to the candidates who have millions of dollars, who are not here today, by the way, who represent the special interests. I don't take their money, never have, never will. I'm pro-life, pro-Second Amendment, pro-Constitution. I've sponsored 14 online debates. Everybody's been invited. Everybody here is still invited. You get sent an invitation every week. Next one is a week from Monday. It's 7 o'clock. We'll be talking about Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. Everybody gets a chance to talk. Everybody gets at least 5 minutes to put out their position. We talk back and forth. Those are the candidates that have the gravitas to represent you, not the $1 million candidates who have $1 million. Again, my name is Brian Slowinski. I'm here. I'm a scrapper. I'm a fighter. Someone for Georgia and America who's not afraid of the Washington, D.C. and will take on the special interest. I don't take their money, never have, never will, and I will represent you. God bless you and God bless America. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Stovall, your closing remarks?
Yes, I'm Valencia Stovall, the independent candidate for the U.S. Senate race. I'm the best qualified. As an 8-year legislator, I have noticed that we've been placing bandages on issues when the real solutions must come from Washington, D.C. We must move beyond the partisan divide and elect a champion for all Georgians to the U.S. Senate. We must work together to develop community policies and that will move us into the future, that takes us into the future. I was endorsed by the IUPAT, which is the International Union for Painters, and I'm number 16 on the ballot. Stovall, that's all. Visit gostovall.com. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stovall. And Mr. Winfield, your closing comments.
My name is Richard Dean Winfield. I'm running as a Democrat to both transform this country and to transform the Democratic Party. This is no time for political cowardice and business as usual. We must forge a new birth of freedom as a matter of life and death, and genuinely, finally fulfill the American dream of ensuring, thanks to a job guarantee social rights agenda, that we can all stand on our own feet and be prosperous through our own efforts. We need to end joblessness and poverty income, and it is only a political decision that is preventing us from doing so. We must make that decision this November. I urge you to vote for Winfield for Senate. For more information on the complete job guarantee social rights agenda, go to my campaign website, winfieldforsenate.com. Listen to my podcast, America Unchained, and read my latest book, Democracy Unchained. Make sure you get to the polls. You know, I, with my colleagues here, am not a darling of the establishment, awash with money. You haven't heard of us on TV ads. You need to take the responsibility of informing yourself about who we are and what we stand for. Make your vote count. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Winfield. And thank you to all of you, as well as, of course, Deborah Jackson and Ed Tarver that were on the call with us earlier today as well. I also want to thank those folks that are behind the scenes helping you all as you navigate through this campaign trail. Also like to thank our partner in this event, the Cherokee County Farm Bureau, and Shirley Paul, who has been my partner through this process, and I appreciate all of her help as well. So again, to you, thank you. To our voters, you need to visit the polls. You've been reminded of that by multiple people on this call today. Early voting does begin on Monday, October 12th. And then of course, Election Day, if you choose not to vote early, is Tuesday, November the 3rd. So go to the polls and make your decision count. To each of you, thank you for the time that you have committed to the citizens of Georgia through your campaign. We wish you all of the best in the coming weeks, and I hope that at some point I'm able to meet you face to face and I'm able to shake your hand and thank you for putting yourself out there to the voters of Georgia. And again, thank you. If there's ever anything that the Cherokee County Chamber of Commerce or the Cherokee County Farm Bureau can do to assist you, I hope that you will contact us. This recording will be ready to distribute in the next short while this afternoon. Enjoy your weekend, and I hope to meet you all soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. Take care, and we'll see you soon.
Take care,
Thank you.
Pam.
Yes, sir.
We'll see you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Pam, and let's do it again.
Hello there.
Perhaps one day.
Speak to you earlier. Hope you're doing all right, Chief.
Thank you all.
Thank you.